Welcome, everybody, to Boston 9/11 Truth. Today we have Dan Noel as our guest
Hi,
speaker.
Jane. Well, it's been
And
a long time, but
presentation
I'm
rest
still
of the
here.
class.
Yes, no.
Let me see.
I just wanted, I don't really have
Somebody
time right now to
speaks
check,
in the background.
but you might want to check your car because there's a light on.
Oh,
It's on for
okay.
now.
Well, I haven't been here more than one.
There we go. Let's start this again. Anyway, welcome everybody to Boston 9/11 Truth. Today is January 22nd, 2026. And tonight our guest speaker is Dan Noel. And Dan has done a presentation geared expressly for Boston 9/11 Truth, which is wonderful. So before we begin, I just want to quickly read off our disclaimer that we read every meeting. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed are the speaker's own and do not necessarily represent the views, thoughts, and opinions of the Boston 9/11 Truth Group. The material and information presented here is for general purposes only. Information and educational purposes. The Boston 9/11 Truth name and all its forms and abbreviations are the property of its owners, and its use does not imply endorsement of or opposition to any specific group, product, or service. Boston 9/11 Truth aims to inspire and promote action by truth advocates who support them and their efforts. So during our meeting, participants, please abide by our guidelines, which you all received in an email. Just in summary, during the entire meeting, all participants are to use polite decorum and are expected to be respectful of all other participants. No personal attacks are allowed. Of course, disagreement and debate are allowable as long as the content, not the person, is confronted and voice is kept at a speaking level of no shouting and no one interrupts another person. The first part of our meeting is our guest speaker's presentation. The presentation is to be presented in full without interruption. We are to treat the speaker with respect, even and especially if there is disagreement. There will be Q&A at the end. So no further ado, Dan Noel, he plans to present the follow-up to the elementary conspiracy class he gave us last March, a slideshow with the first installment of the Essential Fundamental Conspiracy Curriculum, Building Seven's Destruction, digging deeper into the safe haven of conspiracism. On March 20th, 2025, he provided us with a great PowerPoint presentation on conspiracy theorists and shepherds. And he started to wake up to 9/11 in 2006. So he's been at it quite a while. He led Orange County, California 9/11 Truth, led a team for architects and engineers for 9/11 Truth, and is currently volunteering with Richard Gage. He has published original work on the sociological epistemological, I can't pronounce that word, spiritual and pedagogical, the aspects of 9/11. So, with no further delays, Dan, welcome to Boston 9/11 Truth.
Thank you, Susan, and good afternoon or good evening, everybody. As Susan said, this is a follow-up on the class I gave this group a year ago, which was an introduction to conspiracism. So let's recapitulate what we learned a year ago. we found that conspiracism used to be some bizarre and arguably scary folklore that was inherent to humanity. This here is an instance of the traditional conspiracism, the Bible being mostly an evil book, so ridiculous that even an atheist would find it laughable. However, a few years ago, there was a very disturbing change. The conspiracists back in 2020 denied the reality of the pandemic of COVID-19, and that carried very nasty consequences. The lockdowns, the masking, the social distancing, the shutdown of the economy all of a sudden became evil measures for no purpose. Conspiracists insisted that they should live like they used to, and when it came time to vote, they should elect leaders who would restore the so-called old normal. Well, the results were predictable. More people died from COVID-19 in the West and in the United States than elsewhere. The economy suffered much more. The response to the pandemic was more difficult. The lockdowns were longer. And it took a lot longer to the United States and Western Europe to get past the COVID-19 crisis than it took authoritarian places like Cuba, so poor and so close to us. In Cuba, at the beginning of COVID-19, they had the masks for everybody, even though they are so poor. The cops were on the street and in the stores forcing social distancing, and anybody who would not comply with the rules would go to prison. Well, in a few months, COVID-19 was over in Cuba, while here we were still suffering with all sorts of social and economic calamities. So conspiracism nowadays is a very, very important danger. It's no longer marginal. And it so happened that, as we found a year ago, Building 7 conspiracy theories are an important nurturing force in conspiracism. In fact, if you ever talk some sense into your crazy cousin who's reluctant to vaccinate her children against COVID-19 and she accepts to be open to that idea, 20 minutes after you leave, she'll reason that since Building 7 is a hoax, the COVID-19 must be a hoax and the vaccines must be toxic. That's just the way conspiracy logic works. In other words, as we found a year ago, Building 7 is the safe haven of conspiracism. It is the place where conspiracists take refuge when they've lost an argument.
World Trade Center 7 collapsed because of fires fueled by office furnishings. It did not collapse from explosives or from fuel oil fires.
You just heard in a nutshell the story of Building 7. Building 7 happened to be in the World Trade Center, and it suddenly disintegrated in a very short time in the evening of 9/11. As Dr. Sander, one of the chief scientists and engineers who analyzed the collapse, found that it was due to office fires that were themselves a consequence of the Twin Towers structural disaster. Now, where the conspiracies of Building 7 start is that when you look at the video in the back of this slide, as you remember, on the right you see controlled demolitions being carried out on ordinary skyscrapers, and on the left you see a video record of World Trade Center Building 7. Because of the resemblance between the video record of Building 7 and the controlled demolition, the conspiracists are obsessed with the idea that it has to be destroyed by a controlled demolition, and that the theory of destruction by office fires makes no sense irrespective of what the scientists say. Just like vaccines, really. Anyway, we found in our previous class that the conspiracies of Building 7 are seductive. precisely because of this video record. And they are also addictive. If we assume that Building 7 was destroyed by explosives, since the World Trade Center was filled with hundreds of cops, firefighters, and other responders, those experts necessarily realized that there was a criminal controlled demolition taking place, and they covered it up. Then all media institutions, starting with television and the New York Times, and technical institutions, starting with mechanical engineers and structural engineer societies, censored the incident. And of course, the New Yorkers did not notice the criminal controlled demolition because they were traumatized by the fresh destruction of the Twin Towers with a few thousand people inside, which yields to the conclusion that the Twin Towers destruction was the cover that convinced the chief engineers of the controlled demolition of Building 7 that they were safe, and so were their collaborators. This quickly leads to the conclusion that the Twin Towers could not possibly be destroyed by Osama bin Laden's airplanes, and that their destruction was also due to a controlled demolition, even without examining critically their own video record. Now, once you reach the conclusion that the Twin Towers were blown up, the cover-up becomes even worse to imagine than with Building 7, and the censorship is just unfathomable. We're not talking of a censorship of the Twin Towers controlled demolition by the mass media and by law enforcement agencies who would know better, from New York City to Washington, D.C. We are talking of groups and influencers and scholars and pundits who would oppose the consequences of 9/11, like a stiff repression of civil rights in the United States and in other Western countries, a war in Afghanistan, a war in Iraq. The leaders who were the thinking heads besides the opposition to those policies must have been intelligent enough to recognize the controlled demolition of the Twin Towers, and they led their gullible grassroots activists on wild goose chases. The conclusion is that whenever you want to trust anybody on any matter of politics or sociology or even science, you should litmus test that person by his or her acknowledgement of a controlled demolition as the mechanism of the Twin Towers destruction, which means that you should be a conspiracist and be proud of it. This is the addictive nature of Building 7's conspiracies, which to my knowledge is unique among the realm of conspiracism. Now, it didn't have to happen this way. Television could have suppressed the conspiracism of Building 7 a long time ago, in the weeks following 9/11, really. All they had to do was to inform the public of the destruction of Building 7. They should have shown the video record, which I'm showing you now, to the entire world and expressed puzzlement as to how it looked like a controlled demolition. And then all they had to do was to get some experts like Dr. Sander, who we saw a few minutes ago, explain that indeed it looks like a controlled demolition, but it's a completely different phenomenon. And we have reasons to believe what we believe. They've had 25 years to do that. It didn't have to be done by a television channel in the United States. It could have been done by the Japanese television, the Chinese television, the Indonesian television, you name it. So what's weird is that it has not happened. Television has been missing in action, which brings back to the point that really television and its inaction over Building 7 has a major responsibility behind the plague that conspiracism has become today. Anyway, let's remember what happened on the day of 9/11 in New York City. 7 hours after the Twin Towers destruction, World Trade Center Building 7 suddenly and completely disintegrated in 7 seconds. 7 years later, experts from the United States government traced this back to office fires, ignited by projections of structural steel from the Twin Towers. It's a pretty simple story, easy to teach, easy to understand, easy to remember, and I'm still baffled by television's failure to bring this message to the world, and I'm sure you are too. And at any rate, if you ever get a bad idea from being exposed to this video, be aware that if you ever deviate from this narrative, people are going to call you a conspiracist, and they will be right. Unless you can prove to their satisfaction that Dr. Sander and the experts are wrong. And here I'll emphasize that you have to prove it not to yourself but to them. That's easier said than done. Well, with this recapitulation, let's move on. We learned a year ago how to counter Building 7's conspiracism, knowing that it was seductive and addictive. We found that we could not go on the attack against the conspiracists. The best thing to do was to watch out for any conspiracy-minded individual to bring in a conversation Building 7 or subject connected to Building 7. And above all, the controlled demolition. If it's impossible, try to not view the videos of Building 7. And worst case, if it's not possible, the last-ditch defense is to dismiss it, because you would like to have technical experts who are independent on the fanatic conspiracists to confirm that it is a controlled demolition. Another thing you can do is to drag the discussion away from Building 7 by making the conspiracists vomit, and we'll get into detail in that topic later. And again, the biggest problem here is that television should have done this a long time ago but didn't. So where you can go on the attack, and you should go on the attack, is with television. Never hesitate to lobby your television, your preferred television channel. Remind them that they could have killed the safe haven of conspiracism if they had done their job about Building 7. And it's not too late. They can still do it. Now, there's an indirect blessing to the situation of Building 7. It tells us that television is not perfect. It should and did not report properly and timely on Building 7, and it's also a worldwide problem. I'm tired of hearing conspiracies blabber that the televisions in the United States are owned by a couple of corporations. Well, the Iranian television, the Saudi television, the Italian television, the Romanian television are not any better. None of them have done their job regarding Building 7. So we sketched a year ago the idea of outlining the job that television should do but didn't do. What would they put in that documentary on Building 7? Of course, they would highlight the resemblance between Building 7's motion and the motion of a controlled demolition. And, hold on. Oh, excuse me, I got sidetracked. What I want to say here is that television may have lapses other than Building 7. And by studying what happened to television, what caused television to miss Building 7, might explain why television missed other things that could be more disturbing than Building 7. Or maybe, who knows, we would find that television can do nothing against Building 7 conspiracism. That's a scary thought if there's one. So in that excursion, hopefully we'll find some hard data against conspiracism, not only against Building 7, but also conspiracism in other domains. data, and tools. So let's start sketching the documentary that never was by asking what a television station would do confronted with Building 7. Well, they would obviously invite experts to defend their office fire model in the face of the video record, and they would prepare questions. They would prepare tough questions. So they would have to seek arguments for the controlled demolition and also to be fair against the office fire hypothesis. A way to do it would be to just brainstorm what a controlled demolition should produce and what a destruction by office fires should produce. The effect of a controlled demolition is straightforward. It's a well-known industrial process. How an office fire would destroy a building is more difficult to ascertain because it's never happened before Building 7. Well, we'll see how we handle that as we go. Anyway, what we would do is seek the absence and presence of all these symptoms in the destruction of Building 7. And of course, there's a classification in the quality of evidence. The least reliable evidence is anecdotal. People who were there and remember what happened. It's easy for the human mind to alter what really happened. More reliable is the audio record, what microphones picked up and what radio stations and television stations broadcasted as noise. Still more valuable is the photographic record. As they say, a picture is worth 1,000 words. And of course, the most solid record is the video record. A video is literally worth 1,000 pictures. You'll notice that I'm neglecting the forensic evidence, and that's done on purpose because forensic evidence requires careful collection of data and lengthy analysis, and it will be hard to put that in a movie whose audience will be experts in football and lipstick. So we are going to keep the documentary simple and ignore forensic evidence for now. Now, where will we find arguments for the controlled demolition and against office fires? Well, that's pretty easy. We'll simply ask the conspiracists. In fact, let's do just that now. Here's one document that's some kind of a Bible for many conspiracists regarding Building 7. Believe it or not, it was put together by an organization called Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth. I know that you are as amazed by it as I was when I discovered them, but you can be an engineer and a conspiracist at the same time. Now, this block diagram is a bit complicated. We'll dissect it later, and for now, let's just focus on a single little block of it. Here, sudden onset of destruction near the base of the structure. That's an expected aspect of a controlled demolition. So what would television do after reading this box? Well, they would try to turn it into difficult questions for the experts who would be invited to the show. What happens in a controlled demolition when it starts? What happens to a destruction by office fires when it starts? Well, let's fill the criteria of a controlled demolition. According to the conspiracy engineers, the onset is sudden and there's no motion of the building prior to the controlled demolition. And also the motion starts in the basement, which is where the first explosives are set off. Now, we don't really know what an office fire destruction would look like, but we'll try to just take the counterpart of these criteria. Let's say the opposite of no warning motion and the opposite of start in the basement, and let's see where that leads us. Assuming there was a controlled demolition, can we deny that there's no warning motion? Or in other words, can we affirm that there is no warning motion? Well, we've seen the video record, and it's obvious that Building 7 has been motionless for years. it stayed motionless for the whole day of 9/11, and it started moving when it was destroyed. So we are going to eliminate this as a reason to deny the controlled demolition. Conversely, if it was destroyed by office fires, we would assume that there would be a warning motion, because any big structure destroyed by fires is destroyed piece by piece as the fire progresses from one part to another. So here the question is, can we deny that there's no warning motion? And since the answer is negative, we are going to affirm that there is no warning motion, and that is one ground to doubt the possibility of destruction by office fires. Next, a controlled demolition started in the basement. Can we deny, based on the video record, that the destruction starts in the basement? Obviously not. So we will ignore this as a reason to deny the controlled demolition. Now, can we affirm that the destruction starts in the basement and not in the zone of the fires? Well, the video record is unclear about this, so we'll just let it stand like this. We find no reason to doubt the destruction by office fires based on this video record. Now, this gives the controlled demolition plausible. However,
It did not collapse from explosives.
and we would also have a reason to doubt the destruction by office fires, and that's when Dr. Sander comes back in.
World Trade Center 7 collapsed because of fires fueled by office furnishings.
In the meantime, we have found one reason to doubt the office fire hypothesis, and we have logged one question to ask Dr. Sander or another expert. How does their model of destruction by office fire account for the absence of a warning motion? That's a start. Now, do I see the conspiracy engineers raising another box? Box number 2, straight down symmetrical collapse into footprint. Yeah, that's engineering language, a bit short. What the conspiracy engineers mean is that the tower's motion holds clues on its mechanism of destruction. What they are saying is that once the motion of the tower has started, in a controlled demolition, there would be very, very little deformation of the visible part of the building. There will be very little spin. The building dropping could possibly spin of itself, left to right, right to left, forward, backwards, or spin like a corkscrew. But in a controlled demolition, it will do none of that. The trajectory will be straight. Not only that, it will not go left, right, forward or backward. It will be very close to vertical. The motion will be continuous. And the final rest of the building will be inside its footprint or perimeter. Well, let's do what we did earlier, corresponding to the destruction by office fires. Let's just take the opposite of those. In an office fire destruction, would we expect the opposite of very little deformation? Well, we might. There should be a lot of deformation in the zone of the fires. Do we expect the opposite of very little spin? In other words, a lot of spin? Well, we should. The zone of fires where the destruction starts will lack horizontal symmetry. The building is bound to fall sideways. Will the trajectory be straight? It should be anything but straight. The top part of the building will hit several obstacles on its way down. Assuming the trajectory would be straight, would it be vertical? Of course not. That would be the path where the resistance of the lower parts of the building are, so the upper part of the building will necessarily drift sideways. Would the motion be non-continuous? Of course. The top of the building will hit at multiple times lower structures, and they will mutually destroy each other. Finally, can we assume that the destination of the building is outside its footprint? Well, of course. It would take a miracle for the upper part of the building under a random destruction to fall inside its footprint. Well, let's get to work. Can we deny that there's very little deformation? Well, here also the video record speaks of itself. There is very little deformation. That's one potential reason we lose for doubting the controlled demolition. Regarding office fire, can we affirm that there is very little deformation? Certainly. And that gives us a reason. Oh, excuse me. There's little deformation at the higher level, but we don't know if there's deformation in the zone of office fires where the destruction starts. So the video record, when it comes to the deformation of the top, does not give us an argument against the destruction by office fires. My bad. Next, can we deny that there's very little spin? Yes, we can. And that's another argument against the controlled demolition that goes away. Conversely, since we can affirm that there is very little spin and that the facades stay parallel to themselves, that gives us another reason to doubt the office fire theory. Can we deny that the trajectory is straight? Not really. It's as straight as it can be. So there again, we find another argument against the office fire destruction. Now that we know that the trajectory is straight, can we deny that it's vertical? If we could, that would be an argument against the controlled demolition, but we cannot. And since we can affirm that it is vertical, there comes another argument against the destruction by office fires. Now that we know that the motion is straight and vertical, can we deny that it's continuous? Well, it looks like the motion is smooth and the building keeps accelerating. We cannot deny that it's continuous, and we should affirm that it is continuous. So, or maybe we don't, hey? Well, we do. That's really an argument against the destruction by office fires, the continuous motion. Finally, can we deny that the building falls into its own footprint? Well, it looks like its destination is the footprint, but then how can we be sure? We don't see the end of the motion, so based on the video record, we cannot exclude that some of the building will go outside the footprint, so we will not retain this as an argument against the official explanation. So once again, we find the controlled demolition plausible, with the caveat that
it did not collapse from explosives.
And we find more reasons to doubt the destruction by office fires. However, we know that somebody stands behind it.
World Trade Center 7 collapsed because of fires fueled by office furnishings.
And we are preparing some more questions for that very smart engineer. How does his theory account for the failure of the top part of the building to spin in any direction on top of its downward motion? Speaking of the downward motion, why is it straight? Why is it not only straight but vertical? And why is it so smooth and continuous? It looks like our show on television is off to a good start. So let's see what's next here. Let's recap what we found. The motion of building 7 in its upper floors, far above the destruction wave, shows that the start of the destruction is sudden. The deformation of the intact part of the building, the upper floors, is negligible. The spin is negligible. The motion is straight and vertical. It is continuous. And now let's see what the conspiracy engineers have in store for us. Box number 3, removal of column supports. Yeah, that requires a decoding for people who are not familiar with demolition engineering. What the conspiracy engineers mean is that if we look closer to the start of the destruction of Building 7, maybe we'll find that when we say the destruction takes 7 seconds, we are not quite correct. There may be more to the destruction of Building 7 than the fatal 7 seconds. There may be clues of demolition work 10, maybe 20 seconds before the tower actually drops. And what they mean is that if we observe the roof of the building, just before the motion of the tower starts downwards, we will find that the demolitionists managed to blow up the center columns of the building while leaving the facades intact, meaning that the center of the roof will start to go down while the facades are still up and immobile. And after the center has dropped, the demolition engineers will pull the facades towards the center of the building, towards the center axis of the building, and then they will drop the facades. Well, that's precision engineering. Obviously, a destruction by office fires that would start 20 or 30 floors below the top would not telegraph itself to the center of the roof before the facades. So now, how do we observe this? How do you observe the drop of the center before the tower drops? And let's try to get another video. And let's try to get the tower to go back up. It's still fuzzy, isn't it? Let's remove the heading. And let's see if we can get some green mark for the roof level, or maybe an arrow that will tell us something about a penthouse coming back up after the roof is there and going back down before the roof. I think I saw it, did you? The building is coming back up and there's it is. It popped, the penthouse popped up and right back down. Let's do it one last time. Penthouse pops up and back down. So it looks like the center drops before the periphery of the top of the building. Well, that's definitely a blow against the destruction by office fires. And now how about the facades moving in before falling? Well, that's when we need a marker for the roof line, I think. Maybe some green line that will match the roof line at its highest point, like this. Yeah. And now I think I see some crease in the line of the roof before it hits the green line. So it looks like just before the building falls, the roof line gets bent. It is straight and it bends before falling. Let's do it once more. The roof is straight and it bends and then it falls. So it looks like the facade is bending and folding inwards before falling. So the conspiracy engineers have a point. This is something that could be expected for the controlled demolition, and it's unthinkable that it could be a mechanically telegraphed effect from random fires destroying the building in a chaotic way, way lower than this. So the result is that we have more questions for the experts. The controlled demolition is plausible.
It did not collapse from explosives.
Thank you, Dr. Schunder. We won't believe the controlled demolition. We have more reasons to doubt the office fires.
World Trade Center 7 collapsed because of fires fueled by office furnishings.
We believe you, Dr. Schunder. And we have a few more questions for you. How does the theory of office fires account for the penthouse dropping before the facades bending, before the facades going down? We don't doubt you have an answer, but we will ask you to enlighten us. And of course, that's piled upon the earlier questions. Well, this concludes the study of the motion of the building. Except that now the conspiracy engineers have another tough one for us. They claim that the acceleration of the building is also an important matter. They claim that in a controlled demolition, unlike in office fires, the acceleration of the building will be stepped. The building, for all its life, has had zero acceleration because it's been immobile. And when the controlled demolition starts, the acceleration of the building goes from 0 to a certain value. There's only one step in the acceleration. The acceleration is applied and it's not changed. It is constant. And the value of the acceleration is the acceleration of free fall, meaning that when the controlled demolition starts, the speed of the building, the downward speed of the building is 0, which is what it has been all its life. The building will acquire speed. After 1 second, the building will fall at 10 meters per second. After 2 seconds, the building will fall at 20 meters per second. After 3 seconds, the building will fall at 30 meters per second. And every second of the fall, the speed will gain an extra 10 meters per second. That's what they call accelerating at free fall acceleration, which is a gain of 10 meters per second per second. Anyway, in the case of office fires, we would expect the acceleration to be stepped also. There will be lots of shocks awaiting the top of the building as it falls down on the intact part of the building. So we will remove that as a criterion to discount the office fires. However, assuming there are steps in acceleration, unlike in a controlled demolition, we would expect several steps in acceleration. Every time the top of the building will hit anything, its acceleration will change. We would also expect, for the same reason, that the value of the acceleration in office fires will not be constant. It will depend on whatever resistance the top of the building encounters at any given time. And finally, the last value we would expect for the acceleration of a building on a free fall is, the last value we expect for an acceleration of a building destroyed by office fires is free fall, because there will always be something in the way that will slow down the building's acceleration at some level lower than free fall. Well, let's check. Can we deny that the acceleration of building 7 is stepped at the beginning of its destruction? No, we can't. It's obvious that the speed evolves fairly fast. There is a step in acceleration, probably. Is there a single step in the accelerations, or does the acceleration increase sharply or decrease sharply along the destruction? It looks like it doesn't. So we lose another reason to doubt the controlled demolition. Now, can we affirm that there's only one step in acceleration at the beginning, or does it look like there are other steps in the acceleration later? No clue. It looks like there's a single step in acceleration, and that's another argument against office fire. Now, does the acceleration have a constant value? Can we deny that the value of the acceleration, the 10 meters per second that the building gains every second, can we deny that it's 10 meters per second every second? The answer is no. It might be, but then it might not be. As far as we know, looking at the video of building 7, the acceleration could be 10 meters per second at the beginning, then go down to 6, then go up to 12. It keeps accelerating. That's really all we can say. So here we don't find a reason to doubt the the office fire theory. Now, is the acceleration close to free fall? And here the conspiracy engineers are challenging us to measure the acceleration. Well, that can be done by some complicated video analysis and some mathematical work, not too difficult, college level, but it's really not trivial, so it's hard to tell. But, oh, I have an idea. If we look at the building on the right of the video that's in the background, the building on the right is being destroyed by a controlled demolition. So it is subject to a stepped acceleration of a constant value in free fall. The building on the right experiences a downward acceleration at 10 meters per second per second. So since the motion of building 7 is identical, it means that the acceleration of building 7 is also free fall acceleration. So it is falling in free fall or close to free fall. So this solves the question on the office fire side and gives us another reason to doubt the destruction by office fires. It looks like building 7 is actually free falling. And then we can go back to the earlier criterion against office fires that we discarded. Since building 7 accelerates in free fall all along, well, the value of its acceleration is constant. It is free fall. So once again, we find no reason to discard the controlled demolition, and we might be inclined to believe it if it wasn't for.
It did not collapse from explosives.
And here also we have more reasons to doubt the possibility of the destruction by office fires.
World Trade Center 7 collapsed because of fires fueled by office furnishings.
And Dr. Sander owes us some explanations. How does he account for the fact that there's only one step in the acceleration of building 7? How is it that the acceleration is almost constant? And why is it so close to free fall? And on top of it, the other questions are still there. Well, as we near the end of our examination of the video record, the conspiracy engineers offer their box number 8, pyroclastic-like clouds. What they mean is that if we look at the controlled demolition, we will find that the explosions generate a lot of gas and a lot of powder. And that translates into a high pressurized flow of debris outside the tower. In a controlled demolition, unlike in a destruction by office fires, it is expected that large clouds will be produced that are reminiscent of a volcano. And, well, just to be prudent, we'll write pyroclastic-like clouds, not pyroclastic. Those clouds will start at the bottom, where the explosions are, in the basement, really. They will start before the tower starts to move. They will occupy a volume several times the volume of the tower. As the destruction progresses and more charges explode, more gas and more powder will be produced. They will move mostly horizontally in all directions. Their motion will be very fast, and those clouds will be very hot, volcano-like. Now, in a destruction by office fires, we would expect to see relatively little clouds, if any. But if we see them, they would be very, very small. They would not start at the bottom. They would start in the zone of the fire, obviously, where the first failure will take place. They would start when the tower starts to drop and pieces of the tower start hitting each other and pulverize some of its contents and some of the concrete. It's hard to believe that whatever powder is produced that way would be much larger than the tower and that they would expand meaningfully. Assuming they expand, would they expand mostly horizontally? Well, we won't bother Dr. Sander with that. Would they expand not in all directions? Well, who knows? That sounds like a detail. Would they expand fast? Well, probably not, because there would be no explosions to propel them. And they would certainly not be hot, because there would be no explosive to warm them up. Well, let's start reviewing the evidence. Can we deny the existence of pyroclastic clouds in the destruction of Building 7? Well, let's look for a video that would be more telling. This is what New Yorkers would have seen had they been close to Building 7 in the evening of 9/11, when Building 7 self-destructed. Well, obviously, we cannot deny the presence of pyroclastic clouds, and we will even affirm them. So we have one more argument against the theory of office fire. Can we deny that these clouds start in the basement of Building 7? According to the video record, we cannot. Can we affirm that they start at the bottom? Well, the video record is not clear at that point, so we'll ignore that for the moment. Can we deny that the cloud starts before the towers drop? Not really. The video record isn't clear on that point, and we cannot affirm that the cloud starts before the drop either. So we don't find any reason to doubt either theory here. Can we deny that these clouds take a volume bigger than Building 7? Well, obviously not. Can we affirm that they are much larger than Building 7? Yes, the video record speaks for itself. Can we deny that they expand with time as Building 7's destruction progresses? We cannot deny it, and we have to affirm it. So we've got one more reason against the destruction by office fires. Is the progress mostly horizontal? Yes. Can we deny that the progress is in all directions away from Building 7? Well, if you've looked at all the videos that follow each other, you'll find that it cannot be reasonably denied. The powder takes up all the streets in all directions away from Building 7. We cannot deny that these clouds progress fast. We will affirm that they progress fast, giving us another ground against the destruction by office fires. And then the video record does not come with a thermometer, so we don't know whether they are hot or not. So we are going to put this on hold until we have better evidence. Well, as we finish our review of the video record, once again, we find no reason to doubt the controlled demolition. Thank you, Dr. Sander. We believe you. And we find more reasons to doubt the office fire theory.
World Trade Center 7 collapsed because of fires fueled by office furnishings.
Thank you, Dr. Sander, and we are sure you have an explanation for the production of these gigantic clouds that dwarf the volume of Building 7, that expand all along the destruction of Building 7 at such a high speed. Thank you, Dr. Sander. Well, as we wrap up our review of the video record, which is by far the most important record of the destruction, we have to admit that we have found no reason to doubt the controlled demolition. And we have found many arguments against the official theory. These reasons are pretty solid. In fact, they don't require a lot of thinking. It's plain observation on self-evident data, which confirms once again that the conspiracies of Building 7 are extremely seductive. A year ago, I drove you into believing for a few minutes that Building 7 was destroyed by a controlled demolition based on your intuition. What we see today is that when we apply basic observation and reason to it, we confirm the controlled demolition. So we have to admit that the conspiracists are not complete idiots. They are just egotists and they believe their own reasoning faculties over the knowledge and the expertise of the experts. So let's be nice to them and let's not attack them. They deserve our respect. Now, as far as our documentary goes, it looks like Dr. Sander or a local scholar in mechanical engineering will be the heroes, as we were surmising a year ago. We will have a good show. We will introduce all the evidence against the office fire theory, and then we will have Dr. Sander or another expert come up and demolish all our theory. This show is, of course, vitally needed to deal a blow to conspiracism, and we asked our eternal question: what is television waiting for? Why aren't they killing conspiracism where it hurts, at the video record of Building 7? Now, let's let the conspiracy engineers guide us into the next step, which is their boxes 5 and 6. These deal with the photographic evidence, dismemberment of the steel frame, and limited damage to other structures. Well, the photographs taken after Building 7 will give us the debris, what remains of Building 7, and what damage has been done to neighboring buildings. In a controlled demolition, we would expect that the building would be unrecognizable. It would have been completely or near completely disintegrated. In particular, the support columns that went from the basement to the roof, 200 meters long, will not be there. They will have been cut in a large number of straight pieces that will be about 10 meters long, ready to be picked up by a crane and shipped on a truck. All these steel cuts will be inside the perimeter of the building. Most of the concrete will be pulverized, and the neighboring buildings will be intact or near intact. Now, what would we expect in a destruction by office fires? Well, a disintegration is unthinkable. There should still be big chunks of the structure recognizable. They would be damaged and twisted and deformed. Assuming there was a disintegration, large chunks of the structure should still be there. The support columns would certainly not be cut. At most, they would be bent and buckled. Assuming there would be steel cuts, they should not be straight, because a random process will not cut a steel structure without bending and buckling the hell out of it. And assuming these segments are straight, there's no way their length would be exactly matching the size of a truck. The idea that the debris would fall in the footprint is unconscionable, and the idea that the concrete would be pulverized by a random process is also unconscionable. Finally, it's obvious that large chunks of the building would fail to fall in the footprint and would hit neighboring buildings. Well, let's look for the evidence. Here is the picture of Building 7 after its destruction, which you may remember from last time. And here is a close-up. Let's put our text above these pictures and start working on the disintegration. Can we deny the disintegration? Certainly not. Can we affirm the disintegration? Well, the picture speaks for itself. We can affirm it, and we should. Is the disintegration near complete? Well, yes, it is. So once again, we find a reason to doubt destruction by office fires. Have the columns, the support columns that were 200 meters tall, been cut? I can see them nowhere. they must have been cut. And that's another reason against the destruction by office fires. Now, are these cut straight? Well, we cannot deny it, but it may be difficult to affirm because we don't really see what's inside that pile. So the photographic evidence is not clear-cut on this. No pun intended. Are those cuts truck ready? Well, they might be, and they might not be. There also is difficult to say, so we'll ignore this. Did the debris fall mostly in the footprint? Well, the picture speaks for itself. They did fall mostly in the footprint. Was the concrete mostly pulverized? The concrete is invisible. And we saw much of it in the pyroclastic clouds a few minutes ago. So it looks like it was pulverized. About collateral damage, can we affirm that can we deny that there's much collateral damage? Well, the buildings are pretty much intact. This speaks for itself. And can we affirm that there is little collateral damage? Well, here, if you examine closely the buildings around Building 7, if you look in the left column at the truck ready phrase, under truck ready, you'll see a dent in one of the buildings. So it appears that Building 7 did cause a little damage to a neighboring building, and some insurer will have to disburse a certain number of $1 million to fix it. So there was a little damage, but not enough to deny the controlled demolition. All right. Once again, the photographic evidence confirms what we already knew. We find no reason to deny the controlled demolition. Of course, Dr. Sander, of course. And we found many more reasons to doubt the official theory.
World Trade Center 7 collapsed because of fires fueled by office furnishings.
So we trust that Dr. Sander will tell us why office fires disintegrated Building 7, why they almost completely disintegrated it, how they cut the 70 or so support columns in small segments of steel, how did these steels land mostly inside the perimeter of the building, why the concrete was mostly pulverized, and why so little damage was caused to the other buildings. Dr. Sander, we really look forward to listen to you. So, as we continue here, the last questions will be box 7 in the conspiracy engineers block diagram. This is the least trustworthy evidence, but we'll go for it anyway. We are talking of the audio record and what people remember. In a controlled demolition, you would expect people and microphones to remember a deafening noise comparable to an artillery field. Television and radio would make records of it. Witnesses would remember the noise and they would talk to others, so people who were not there would also mention it. On an office fire destruction, there would be noise of pieces of the building banging together, but nothing like the sharp noise of explosions. So since there would be no noise, television and radios would not capture it, witnesses would not hear it, and they would not tell anybody else. Well, here I'm gonna make it a little easier, and I'll tell you right away that if you look on the internet for TV and radio records regarding Building 7's destruction, you won't listen to explosions. There's no loud bang at all. So this clears a possible reason to doubt the destruction by office fires. Similarly, if you ask the cops and the firefighters and the rescuers who were by the hundreds at the site of Building 7's destruction and ask them if there was a controlled demolition and if they heard explosions, they will tell you no, 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 no. And if you inquired at the New York City Hall about official records in police and firefighting files about any explosions in Building 7, you'll find nothing or close to nothing. Meaning that, to the credit of the office fire theory, there is no strong audio or anecdotal recollection of deafening noise. And if you go to people who would have heard of explosions secondhand, like, I don't know, the New York Times, you won't find anything either. Now, the conspiracists were not stopped by that. And if you go on the internet, you'll find something like this. Oh,
World Trade Center 7 collapsed because of fires fueled by office furnishings.
yes, we know, Dr. Sander. You'll find that the conspiracists found some witness recollections like this. Whoops.
Building actually, because it was on fire, the floors of the building were on fire, and we heard this sound that sounded like a clap of thunder. Turned around, we were shocked to see that the building was it looked like there was a shock wave ripping through the building, and the windows all busted out, and it was horrifying. Then about a second later, the bottom floor caves out, and the building followed after that, and we saw the building crash down all the way to the ground. We were in shock, and then
Okay, so there's one professional witness who was there and who recalls some explosion before the motion of the building, so the conspiracists have a point. Here's another.
Started walking through one side of the building. That sound until it was gone. The first explosion I heard when I was on the stairwell landing. When we made it down to the 6th floor. Then we made it back to the 8th floor. I heard some more explosions. Also the sound. Like a boom. Like an explosion. More than one? Yes. We started walking down the stairs. We made it to the 8th floor. Big explosion. Blew us back into the 8th floor. When we get outside, police officer comes to me and says, you have to run. We have more information of bombs, so you have to run.
Well, this was Barry Jennings, who happened to be trapped inside Building 7 before its destruction. What you saw here came from the BBC, a documentary where the BBC attempted to destroy Building 7's conspiracism, but they really took a cheap tangent at it, and they did never attack frontally the video record of Building 7, which is what we are doing now, possibly for the first time in 20 and some years.
The whole time you hear boom, 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 boom. So I think I know an explosion when I hear it. I was real close to Building 7 when it fell down, and I don't know, but that didn't sound like just a building falling down to me while I was running away from it. There's a lot of eyewitness testimony down there hearing explosions. I didn't see any reason for that building to fall down the way it did. And a lot of guys should be saying the same thing.
Okay, this was Craig Bartner, a New York cop who happened to be at the World Trade Center and witnessed Building 7's destruction. And here's the last one.
It's like another 2 seconds. You heard explosions. Like, boom. It's like a distinct sound. It's not like compression, like boom, boom, boom. Like floors that were dropping and collapsing. This was boom, and like you felt rumble in the ground, like almost like you wanted to grab onto something. That, to me, I knew that was an explosion. There was no doubt in my mind.
This was Kevin McPadden, a responder who happened to be near Building 7. The conspiracists found a few witnesses of explosions, and we're not going to discard them just like this. We'll give the conspiracists the benefit of the doubt. It's not worth finding. So maybe there was a deafening noise after all. And of course, these witnesses talk to others. So if you look very carefully around New York City, you'll find people who remember that they heard recollections of explosions. Anyway, this gives us with a reason to doubt the controlled demolition theory.
It did not collapse from explosives.
So we can be reassured that Dr. Sander may actually be telling us the truth. And the conspiracist will have some explaining to do, even though a point could be made that it's a detail compared to the overwhelming video and photographic record that favors the theory of controlled demolition. So, if we recapitulate what we've learned from our macroscopic review of the direct evidence, we have an overwhelming push in favor of controlled demolition and against office fires. This confirms once again the importance of Building 7 in the industry of conspiracism. It is the safe haven of the conspiracists. And this is precisely why a society ought to beat it and hit it and destroy it into oblivion. So it looks like the documentary we are sketching would be very useful. It would be an enormous benefit to humanity. We would counter the intuition of the conspiracists and the elementary level reasoning of the conspiracists with the analysis and the reason of the experts. And the title of our show could be something like The Little Office Fires That Would Outsmart the Best Demolitionists in the World. Now all this raises tough questions. The $1 trillion question is, why doesn't the documentary exist? What stands in its way? Television has had 25 years to produce it, and nobody has done it anywhere in the world. And the second question, of course, is, where's the evidence against the controlled demolition and in favor of the office fire theory? We know where it's not. It's not in the macroscopic review, the systematic review with it of the available evidence. Could it be that if the experts analyze the video record in minute details, they will find reasons against the controlled demolition and for the office fires? That may be too complex for our documentary. Or maybe is it that the evidence is in the forensic analyses? Well, let's think about that for a moment. The forensic evidence. You may remember that I didn't want to explore it because it's much more complicated than the exercise we went through. But could it be where the controlled demolition is disproved and where the office fire theory is vindicated? Well, if that's the case, the show could have a great outline. First, we will smash the office fire theory with the video record, with the photos, and then we'll call the experts. And against all odds, in a glorious finish, they will explain why the conspiracists are wrong and why, when they look at the detailed analyses of the debris, they find that the controlled demolition makes no sense and office fires is the only technically credible scenario. Well, what do I see creeping down on the left side of the screen? Some more stuff from the conspiracy engineers. Oh, that's their forensic evidence. Molten steel and thermite incendiaries. Oh my, what are we getting ourselves into? Scary thought. Could those conspiracy engineers be right? Could they actually know what they are doing? Or are they just master obfuscators and they see an opportunity to be famous by peddling mindless gibberish? Was it an error to use their materials? But I'm telling you, these are the best guidelines you'll find if you want to analyze the destruction of Building 7. Should we instead use the experts' work and show that on television? It's going to be complicated. Well, anyway, it's time to move on. Let's start to conclude here. We have confirmed that the building 7 is seductive and addictive. So more than ever, when you are in a polite conversation, stay away from building 7. Stay away from subjects connected to it. If somebody brings the Twin Towers, change subject. If somebody brings 9/11, change subject. If somebody brings the terror attacks of Oklahoma City in 95, Bali in 2002, Madrid in 2004, London in 2005, Mumbai in 2008, change the subject. Stay away from building 7. Go into some tangent if you hit building 7. If you cannot avoid building 7, avoid the controlled demolition. Get into some other aspect of building 7. Any aspect. And if you really have to control the controlled demolition, ask questions to the conspiracists and try to make them vomit. We'll go to the vomit in a few minutes. But the idea is that get the conspiracy to ramble and talk endlessly so as to disgust the audience. And then, of course, if the controlled demolition is a topic, avoid the videos if you can. Stay in the abstract. If you have to view the video, make the conspiracists vomit so that the conspiracists will distract the audience, will drag them into some tangent, and will disgust the audience. And hopefully they'll forget that they saw the video. If the video is the topic of discussion, be forceful and request that independent technical experts review the video before you believe the controlled demolition. And those experts should be professional demolitionists, not from some European or Russian or South African demolitionist, but the demolition company geographically closest to you. If there's no demolition company in your area, look in the yellow pages or in an engineer who is an expert on skyscraper structure. And then, of course, dismiss the conspiracy experts because there are very few engineers who put their name behind the controlled demolition, and there's none in the area where you live. And if you really cannot do anything else, let the conspiracists indulge into vomiting a 5-minute tirade on why the professional demolitionists deny the demolition of Building 7. That's a sure way to turn off the audience. So with the conspiracists, don't engage in an argument. You don't have arguments against the controlled demolition of Building 7. We just went through it. Those arguments are very difficult to find. We'll have to leave them to the experts. Wait for the experts to give you detailed data and take a course in rhetoric because you'll need arguing skills. What you can and should do is keep lobbying television. Television has no excuse to not hit the safe haven of conspiracism by putting out a clear documentary where they show the video of Building 7 and get a smart expert in mechanical or explosion or civil engineering to blow apart the theory of controlled demolition. Every time a TV anchor complains of conspiracism, email them and put them in their place. And tell them that that documentary would probably be very exciting. Now, the vomit method, which I alluded to a few times. I learned it from a mentor of me in business, Mr. Bernie Dorman, who died a few years ago. The conspiracists are full of mental wounds. They long to be heard. The conspiracists have the syndrome that they know so much. It could be so useful to people close to them, to the world. And my life would be so much better too if people did what I tell them to. Not only that, but they would regard me as a hero. They would praise me. There would be statues celebrating me. Cities would make monuments for me everywhere. Wouldn't that feel good? You know, that's the twisted mind of the conspiracist. So what we do with the vomit method is indulge them, is to allow that mental wound to come out. What we do in the vomit method is ask the conspiracist questions whose answer we already know. Answers that are frightening. Well, frightening in a good sense. Questions that will lead the conspiracist and the audience away from the truly dangerous topics, which is how the video record of Building 7 suggests a controlled demolition. Frightening answers that will scare the audience away from the video record. Vomit questions that make the conspiracists vomit an answer for a long time to bore the audience away. Questions that will make the conspiracy vomit complicated answers, where the conspiracist will explain how intelligent he is, so that the audience will be confused away from the video record of Building 7 and its simplicity. Now, of course, since the evidence that you can put your hand on is in favor of controlled demolition, you'll have to select points of evidence in your vomit questions that are minor, even weak, like the ones we saw earlier. Introduce the audio noise that cannot be found in the radio record or the television record. That will send the conspiracist on vomiting why the noise is on the radio record and on the television record. Make the conspiracist vomit on the hundreds of rescuers who were witnesses to Building 7 and who will not talk about it. Titillate the conspiracist ego that the few people we heard of, we saw and listened to, Kevin McPadden, Barry Jennings, Craig Bartner, those people are unreliable. They are so few and far between. They'll get a 10-minute rebuttal to it. Inquire about data, about any data other than the photographic and video record, like the forensic. Were residues found of the explosives? That will give you a 5-minute lecture. How about the logistics of the explosives? Where were they made? Who covered them? Who covered up the manufacturing, the purchasing, and the transportation of the explosives? Why did the occupants of Building 7 fail to complain about the controlled demolition of their office? How about the insurers of Building 7? Let the conspiracy vomit. Let me tell you about the insurers of Building 7. If only you knew, etc., etc. It's wonderful. That's the way you manipulate the conspiracist away from what really matters, away from the video record of Building 7. Well, another tool I'll give you before we finish is the Conspiracy Express, that can also be used to confuse and confound conspiracists and scare the audience. And it's about using the seductiveness and the addictiveness of Building 7's video record against the conspiracists. In fact, I already ran it by you earlier. Let's assume that the conspiracists are right and that Building 7 was destroyed by a controlled demolition. Well, obviously, the fire departments and police departments of New York City are corrupt enough so that they did not notice it. And so there's the mass media and technical institutions of mechanical and structural engineers. Now, the New Yorkers can be excused for not noticing Building 7 because the Twin Towers kept them busy. But then the cover of Building 7's controlled demolition, not precisely the destruction of the Twin Towers, meaning they were also demolished by explosives. meaning that the censorship of the Twin Towers has been going on for 25 years, and just about every respectable leader is a censor of 9/11, meaning that if you believe that Building 7 was destroyed by explosives and you practice observation and reason, it won't take much intellectual work for you to find that you have to mistrust any significant leader who ignores the controlled demolition of Building 7. And right there, the next step is to prod the conspiracy theorist into finding some leader who is trustworthy and who could be supported. And more often than not, they will find one leader they'll trust who's not evil. They'll say that they'll trust the Cuban leaders because they resist US imperialism, or Vladimir Putin because he's such a calm statesman, or the Green Party because they want so much peace and harmony. Well, fine, but if those leaders are so good and want the general and want the common good, why do they ignore Building 7? Conspiracists, you're not thinking straight. Maybe you should rethink the controlled demolition of Building 7. Okay, enough said. I think we are concluding here. Yep. So if we recap what we did today, the fact is we made this superficial review of the direct evidence and the conclusion is overwhelming. The conspiracists seem to be right and the experts seem to be wrong. And this confirms the danger, the unique danger of Building 7 conspiracy as being seductive and addictive. They are the safe haven of conspiracism. It makes sense for conspiracies to take refuge in Building 7 when they are lost. And again, TV could have solved the problem and killed it in its root. They could smash it a long time ago by simply letting the experts speak out as soon as the experts had something to say. And they would have dealt a blow not just to Building 7 conspiracism, but to conspiracism as a whole, because Building 7 is the core of conspiracism. That's what maintains conspiracism alive. It could have been a spectacular documentary. And TV miserably failed in action all around the world. So moving on, as General de Gaulle said in 1940, we have lost one battle against conspiracism. We have not lost the war. I propose that in the future, we do review the forensic evidence of Building 7. We'll stay at the macroscopic level. And yes, we will use the conspiracy engineers guidelines because they look so simple. It will take some work to review what the experts did. And it may be more complicated than what we've done so far. And then we will complete the outline of what will be, hopefully, the conspiracy killing documentary, with the experts being the white knights that will cut to the horror of conspiracism. And this being said, I thank you for your attention.
Well, thank you, Dan. That was truly vomit worthy. I think we should erect a statue to Dr. Sunder. Oh my goodness. So, any questions? Raise your hands. And I changed spotlighted. There we go. Any comments, questions? No? Magnus. Yes, go ahead, Magnus.
Yeah, great to see you, Daniel O'Neill. And Noel, my question would be, are you like Richard Rotans, who just asking for an investigation, who doesn't believe it's a controlled demolition, or do you believe it's a controlled demolition? I'm a little tired today. I'm sorry I didn't get the last part. Do you believe it's a controlled demolition?
Good question, Magnus. This is the first installment of the fundamental conspiracy class. So I propose at this point that we stick to the official line of a destruction by office fire. And in fact, you may have noticed that this is the beginning of a demonstration by absurdity. I do what mathematicians, physicists, and engineers do all the time. They want to demonstrate that something is false. They assume it's true. They draw inferences from it until they find something that is obviously false, and then they conclude that their hypothesis is false. And I would slightly correct what you assumed. I wouldn't say I believe Building 7 was demolished. I would say I know it was demolished because it's a scientifically established truth. And what we are doing here is start the process of the analytical demonstration. And because there's been so much obfuscation against conspiracism, we have to respect the way that the human mind works when it has been uh, brain solid. I don't want to say brainwashed with garbage. So Building 7 was destroyed by a controlled demolition, as the video record suggests, fair and square.
Thank you for your answer, and sorry for that it's night time here in Norway.
Okay.
And one
Okay.
more thing. Sorry, Susan, can just take one more fast thing here. The penthouse on Building 7, when it fell down, that's directly top-down demolition, in my opinion. So I'm just asking for an investigation, and now I found out that Richard Rotans doesn't believe it's a controlled demolition, but he is asking for an investigation. So we can just we can show firefighters the paper from Richard Rotans and find people, both people who doesn't believe and who believe the controlled demolition. Thank you anyway for your work.
Thank you, Magnus. I would slightly correct what you're saying. Indeed, a proper technical investigation of Building 7 is warranted, but it's not essential because every person with an intelligence significantly above average, meaning 20% of the people, can do the investigation on their own just by reading and verifying conspiracy material. The technical investigation of Building 7 is technically trivial. So it's already been made. The investigation that would really be interesting would be the investigation into the details of the censorship of Building 7. Why is it that the New York Times ignored the criminal controlled demolition of Building 7? Why is it that television worldwide, including in Norway, with no offense meant, ignored the controlled demolition of Building 7? And beyond that, why is it that the controlled demolition of Building 7 was ignored by television worldwide? Why is it that as the Iraq War was looming, Saddam Hussein did not have his state-controlled Iraqi television show the video record of Building 7 and the Twin Towers to let the Iraqi people know that the people who wanted to wage war against them were lying to their teeth as to what happened on 9/11. These are the real questions. Why is it that it seems like there was a worldwide and cross-disciplinary conspiracy to censor something as obvious, as in the face as the controlled demolition of the World Trade Center on live television? That is the investigation that would be most helpful, and there's little doubt that its conclusions would be earth-shattering. But I get ahead of myself as part of the advanced conspiracy class. Over.
Okay. Next we have Craig. Go ahead, Craig.
Yeah, I have two things to ask about. First of all, I did an article years ago about the Pentagon where I used that kind of you called it absurdist sort of approach. And I was sort of basically taking the, how would you obscure the truth about the Pentagon? Here's the techniques you would use. And it was all tongue in cheek and very sarcastic. I got accused of actually trying to help the other side to hide the truth because the person didn't get the joke. But anyway, but here's my concern though with this approach, because I was aiming that at other truthers, and it was intended to satirize the people that are pushing parts of the official story in the movement. So I'm a little concerned at the prospect, frankly, that a new person who doesn't know anything about 9/11 might, hear your approach and might be confused about what you're actually supporting, because I mean there were different times when I wasn't quite sure whether you were being tongue in cheek or whether you were being dead serious. And before I pass it to you to comment, there are words like the first time I heard the word conspiracism or conspiracist was from a gentleman named Jonathan Kay, who is a supporter of the official story, and he uses it. And when the first time I heard it, which I'd never heard before, my reaction was like, this sounds like something the CIA made up for propaganda purposes. So I'm wondering, I'm concerned about the way you've used it, and whether this tongue-in-cheek approach is going to be lost on new people. So I'd love your comment on that. And then I have a follow-up.
Very good question, Craig. Actually, there are two questions. Number one, about my approach. I still defend my approach because what I do is, by defending the official story as much as possible, I force my audience to be open-minded. And at some point in the next installment, I shouldn't say that, but when we review the forensic evidence, we are going to have to explore the possibility of a technical cover-up by Dr. Sander, and we'll find that there's a cover-up. So at this point, I forced my audience to balance both hypotheses, and it's okay. Questioning the truth doesn't hurt. The truth is not afraid of testing. And one difference between Building 7 and what you mentioned about the Pentagon, with no offense meant, and well, I might as well tell you, the Pentagon, I think I'm mostly in agreement with what you say. The Pentagon is much more complex than Building 7 precisely because there's no video record of what happened that screamed what happened. What's missing in the Pentagon is a video of what you said happened, which is very credible. You have witnesses, you have forensic evidence, but there's no video. On Building 7, the video screams volume about what happened, which is actually why Building 7 is so precious among conspiracies. It is a safe haven of conspiracism. It is a jewel, and it is an error for conspiracy scholars to ignore it as much as they do. If Building 7's conspiracy is learned, taught, and explored, it will eventually be the downfall of all conspiracies, those that are real and those that are not real. Because the same people who mastered the censorship of Building 7 and the Twin Towers also mastered the conspiracy of censoring the Pentagon. They mastered the conspiracy of censoring COVID-19, if it's a conspiracy. They are the same people who obfuscate everything. If we manage to unmask them with Building 7 and the Twin Towers, all the other conspiracies will come out clean, and it will be a paradigm shift humanity has not lived in literally thousands of years. And your second question, what was it? I forgot. I forgot, and I'm sorry.
Well, there was a follow-up that I was going to ask, but so you thought you divided what I said into two different questions. So I'm not sure which one you were thinking the second one was. But it had to do, the word conspiracism.
Oh, yes, that's right. You know what? I propose, maybe I'm the one doing that, I'll be famous. I propose that conspiracist is the badge of honor. Remember how the word Protestant came up? It was a badge of dishonor. The Catholics would call the Lutherans and Calvinists Protestants. Right. And eventually the Protestants, well, yes, we are Protestant. We protest the concept that the Pope is the sole interpreter of the Holy Scriptures. We are Protestant and we are proud. A couple of hundred years later, the Unitarians did the same thing. Well, in Boston, to make sure, there was a strong Unitarian presence. Christians who believed that the Christian God was Unitarian, that Jesus and the Holy Spirit were exaggerations and the Trinity was a myth. And the mainline Protestants called them Unitarians, Unitarians, Unitarians. And at some point, I think it's a reverend named Channing who in Boston around 1820 put out a 5-hour sermon. Yeah, he beats my talks. And the title of the sermon was Unitarian Christianity. He took over the disparaging qualifier of Unitarian, endorsed it, affirmed it, and elaborated and blabbered for 5 hours on the Bible, challenging anybody with intelligence and reason to challenge his finding that the Christian God was Unitarian. The Unitarians appropriated an insult and they were proud of it. And today they are still Unitarian Christians. So let's do it with conspiracists. Yeah. We are conspiracists because we are intelligent. Just like the Protestants thought they were Protestant because they were Christian and intelligent. And the Unitarians thought that, well, we are Christian, we accept the Bible as the revelation of the divinity. And because we are intelligent as we read the Bible, we are Unitarian. That's all there is to it. So let's do it with conspiracism. I'm a conspiracist because I'm intelligent. I don't look like an idiot when I see the video of Building 7. I'm a conspiracist. It's the right thing to do.
Okay, all right, and thank you. And I just wanted to ask you. There's you've said in the past, you've been quoted as talking about the Department of Defense having a unit of parapsychology that targets 9/11 truthers, and I want to make sure I get the tone. I understand whether the tone was like dead serious or whether there was an element of, since that's been what we've been talking about. And you mentioned that they harassed through sorcery, aka witchcraft and black magic. That was a quote I've seen anyway. Was that meant literally, or was there any tongue in cheek in it, or what's the story?
Oh my, we are getting sidetracked. But since there are a few questions, I'll go on that. This is part of I will allude to that in the advanced class of conspiracism, and I.
Oh, you're frozen. Dan froze up.
Hope it wasn't my question.
Wow. Dan?
Oh, I see that my connection is unstable. Can people hear me? My internet connection is unstable.
Froze up.
Back.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Craig, the short answer to your question is yes. Yes. Spirituality, evil spirituality, has been used to harass 9/11 conspiracists, myself included. That's how I learned it existed. I happen to know basic practical spirituality at the time, so I was able to counter it. And well, somehow I drove myself, at times I don't understand quite how, to counter those systems at their source, and I happen to tower over them and not be executed in the process. Many other spiritual practitioners did attack those systems, which is not difficult once you know practical spirituality. But those people are powerful and they'll kill you within a few days. I may have been the first one who was not killed promptly in return and kept working against those systems. But yes, those systems exist. On the day of 9/11, before 9/11, those sorcerers, those professional sorcerers employed by the US Department of Defense at the time, spread far and wide the message that the Twin Towers were going to be disintegrated, which is partly why many people had premonitions of the Twin Tower disappearing. It was just people who were a bit more sensitive toward that broadcast, that spiritual broadcast, and well, thought when they would look at the Twin Towers, oh, it's abnormal, that tower shouldn't be there. They were just a bit too sensitive. On the day of 9/11, those sorcerers were hard at work in real time to control the main actors of 9/11, make sure that people on television or the mayor of New York City, members of Congress would do as they were being told and told the official story. And later they would harass 9/11 activists. I think I never said, I said it in public once when at the funeral of my wife. I was actually surprised by that. On one occasion, they harassed my 13-year-old son because he had been at the bookstore earlier that day and had spent some time in the books of David Ray Griffin on 9/11. And that night it sickened the hell out of him until I cleared it. And notify those sorcerers that next time you touch my son, there'll be consequences you don't like. So yeah, those people do exist, and it's a pity that spiritual education in the West has been neglected, because it's really not difficult to tower above spiritual evil. What those sorcerers do is really telekinesis, which is another word for practical spirituality. Telekinesis is the leverage of spirituality to change things in the universe. And the easiest thing to do is to realign a human mind to the divine purpose. It's too bad it's not taught, because it is simple and humanity could benefit greatly for it. Instead, telekinesis was a science in the late 19th century. It somehow got thrown under the bus, but evil people kept using it, and the results speak for themselves. More than one high-ranking politician who tried to speak the truth for 9/11 has been hit by those people. Hey, since I'm not interrupted yet, and since Richard is on the call, a long time ago, around 2010, Richard had an unprecedented opportunity. One state senator in Arizona by the name of Johnson, I think, I want to say Karen Johnson, got into 9/11, and she made a speech in her state senate about 9/11 conspiracism. Guess what? The Department of Defense sorcerers worked on the meeting, and through their science, they hit and they induced pain on the senators who A, were paying attention to Johnson, and B, were inclined to believe what she said. Anytime a senator would formulate a thought of agreement with what Johnson was saying, he or she would get discomfort automatically. I mean, it's simple to do. I do. I have automatic procedures to change people's mind when certain things happen. Well, for good, not for evil, but that's the world in which we live. See, there's still a silence, and nobody interrupted me.
Well, wait, I'll interrupt you.
Okay, go ahead.
Just so you know, there are two hands up.
I'm sorry. Let's listen to somebody else. Otherwise, I'll still be talking tomorrow.
All right. Let's go to Jean, and my timekeeper, Al, is reminding me that we're well past 8 o'clock and we have an agenda to go on. So if you could keep your questions and responses short, that'd be appreciated.
Yep, I just wanted to thank Dan. I appreciate his zeal, and I was going to say I appreciate the perspective that you shared that with, because I don't know if you're familiar with C.S. Lewis's Screwtape Letters, the book.
No.
So he wrote a book from the perspective of the demons. So it threw you for a loop because you were seeing it from the other side. And that's exactly what you kind of did there, throwing it from the side of the demons, if you will, of 9/11. And I kind of did appreciate it. It does take a little bit of change in perspective and how you're listening to you, but once you get it in there, I think it was really good. So thank you for that.
I was also thinking it could be a good comedy routine delivered differently. Yeah.
Does anybody here know C.S. Lewis's Screwtape Letters?
No.
they're not written in any chronological order, but it's written from the perspective of the demons and how they, hey, let's get into this guy's head, and if we can just distract him with this, and it's an interesting read. So check it out.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's all. Thank you.
Oh, and I just want to say happy birthday to Craig. It was yesterday for everyone who doesn't know.
Today,
Thank you, Sandra. Appreciate it.
And
Sue
Richard.
already, yeah, Sue
Yeah,
did
well,
that
Richard,
too,
of course, yeah.
but I'll take it. That's good. Thank you.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Happy birthday, Craig.
I wished Richard happy birthday so many different ways.
Thank
20th,
you.
21st. Nice.
Let's not forget James.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So, John.
No, Joe Olson was that, right?
Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
Dan, we don't have time to really go into this. I've been a self-employed registered civil engineer since 1983. I've worked in hundreds of multi-story buildings. I knew when the South Tower leaned 22 degrees and then straightened up and fell in 14 seconds, it was controlled demolition, but I didn't make any statements about it until 2015. I've done thousands of hours of research on this. I'm going to put in the comments section on Rumble and on YouTube when it's posted information for you to read, 2 articles that I wrote and then one that was follow-up to that that was at Veterans Today. It's the Palmer Report. It has 45 PowerPoint slides and 3 90-minute videos and a 5,000-word dissertation about what happened. And I agree with what they said 100%, except they didn't understand isotopes. But thank you for your presentation, and I hope we get to talk sometime in the near future.
Okay. Next we have Jack. Go ahead, Jack. Are you there?
Yes, I just wanted to ask, I've seen most of those pictures of buildings coming down in controlled demolition, but where did you get all of your pictures of the controlled demolitions, or are they just the standard ones from architects and engineers?
Actually, I'm using those of architects and engineers for 9/11 truth.
You
They
say
authorized
again?
me to do that a long time ago.
Say again?
These videos and pictures are from architects and engineers from 9/11 truth.
Oh, okay.
They
All right.
authorized me to use them in my presentation some time
Okay.
ago.
All right. Thanks very much.
All right. See, and I think that concludes this portion of our presentation. Thank you, Dan, for joining us and customizing your video just for us. So that was really awesome. And so our next meeting will be February 5th when we have Sybil Evans joining us. Until then, peace and truth among all of us. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan.